Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, call to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Jen and Larry, thank you for again being out a second night in a row for commission business. We have public comment. Anybody out there? Nothing? How about any hands raised?
No hands
Doesn't look
raised.
like anyone's even out there.
Oh, there's a Jay Birdman out there.
Okay. All right, good. All right, we're moving on to, we should have approval of the minutes. So do we have a motion to approve?
So I move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Jen.
Yes, thank you. Okay, now continued collaboration to create our bylaw on responsibilities of commissioners. We have two new iterations that have been offered, one by Chairman Wilcox, the other by Commissioner Maselli. How would we go about taking a look at this and working through it?
I appreciate Mr. Maselli's effort. I wish I'd had an opportunity to see this before right now.
Well, I did-
different.
I worked on it this morning, so
Okay.
that would have not been possible.
A looks to be about the same.
It is.
You change responsibilities to roles, but I don't.
Well, only because it's roles of commissioner. But I'm not married to that word, but it's under the roles, so that's the reason. Yeah.
The second one looks to be identical.
Yeah.
And the third one also.
The third one, I thought mine was briefer than yours, but they seem to be saying the same thing. So if you want to use more words rather than fewer.
No, I frown upon that generally. Yes, we can shorten that. We'll
Yeah,
go
all
with-
right.
Yeah,
We're gonna go with this one.
yeah. So, okay.
Let's see on those.
And D, I have no argument with it all.
So
I think that's,
let me tell you where that came from. So I am continued to be not in support of talking about the strive to keep person informed. I think it could lead to people acting independently. And it's a little vague and fuzzy for me. So I try to think like, what is the piece of that that's important as part of a working group?
let me suggest that we just go through these things in series, because so far I've agreed with.
But that's where D came from. That's why well, all right, then pause on D and we'll come back to it. That's what you want to do. That's fine. Yep.
Going down to code of conduct. One is identical.
Yep. So two, all I did was add parliamentary procedures because one of the things that we left hanging out after our lat meeting was not liking Robert's rules. So I changed that to,
The reason.
go ahead.
The reason I dropped it is we already have a bylaw in our bylaws that say we're governed by Robert's rules. So I didn't think we need to say it twice.
Yeah, parliamentary procedures though is.
I don't disagree. It's another bylaw, but if we're saying this is how we would expect commissioners to, this is their role, this is their behavior. I thought paired with
I have no objection.
the FOI piece, I thought it flowed nicely and got rid of the Robert's rules piece.
I have no objection to it other than that it's duplicative, but.
Number 3.
So again, I try not to be more wordy than you, generally speaking, but I thought even if there's other things that aren't in executive session and we still shouldn't necessarily be talking about.
I think if you talk about fuzzy, that's awfully fuzzy. I don't think we need to maintain confidentiality about things that are discussed in public session.
No, no, but there are other things that come across our paths that are, if we're in conversation with perhaps the chief on a separate time, and, you know, he could be sharing something, those kinds of things do need to have some confidentiality maintained.
I think if he asked us for confidentiality and we agree to it, absolutely yes. If he doesn't ask us for confidentiality because we're reflecting a citizen concern about something that's been expressed to us, and he gives us an answer, I think we ought to be able to share that information with the citizen who was concerned.
But you're citing one specific example. You know, the one that comes to mind for me are more personnel related matters. So if he is sharing personnel things with us, that kind of stuff, particularly, we need to maintain confidentiality on it. I don't see anything wrong with saying maintain confidentiality in that clause. I do think that.
And I think it goes, you know, because we all live in this town, right? So if you and I have a happenstance meeting, in that meeting, conversation, in Stop and Shop, and I say, geez, you know, that fourth agenda item, man, that's really got, right? So that's an appropriate, but for you to then go tell Joe's really cranked up about number 4, that's not maintaining confidentiality. That's kind of where my thinking was.
Okay, and let me express again a note of disagreement. I don't think that there is anything wrong at all with commissioners sharing with one another concerns that either a citizen has raised or another commissioner has raised or the chief has raised, unless there has been a request that is included in confidentiality and an agreement to that. That is just, you know, good behavior as an individual. But to impose on a commissioner as part of our bylaws that we can't share with our citizens or with each other anything that we've discussed with somebody else about the commission business strikes me as way overkill. And that's what this would do. Maintain confidentiality of what? You know.
I just think there's a lot of things that get lots of conversations that no one may say the word keep this confidential that should be right. Other than
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, you know, that the whole, what you're portraying here does not fall into the category of confidentiality, but there are other issues that are talked about that should not be repeated.
Well, then we have to say what they are instead of just saying maintain confidentiality. I would say, okay, what are you talking about? Maintain confidentiality of what? Define it. Don't just have a broad statement, maintain confidentiality. That's way overbroad.
Well, I think there's lots of examples where people may reach out to the chair or the chief seeking information, seeking clarification. And there is, in that situation, there's more information shared with someone as a member of the commission than there would be with the public, and that commissioner shouldn't be sharing it. The chief is any one of us who calls in day or night and asks about things, he's very open and honest, and there's an expectation there that that's not shared.
Okay,
So
so
you're getting information that you're privy to as a member of the commission that the public shouldn't be aware of.
Okay, so are you saying maintain confidentiality of any communications with the chief?
Why don't we just say when appropriate?
That doesn't provide any guidance.
A lot of bylaws don't provide much guidance. Bylaws are, as we keep on talking about, they're bigger than being specific. There's a lot of open-ended stuff that is presented in bylaws. They're supposed to be a guide, not an
But
absolute.
who decides when it's appropriate? And do you decide it before the fact or after the fact? I mean, you're forgetting, I have been reprimanded for, by the commission for doing something that I thought was completely appropriate. And in fact, the commission later voted to correct what I had complained about. But I still was reprimanded. And if you have as vague a standard as maintain confidentiality when appropriate, that means a majority can always say to a minority, what you did was wrong and we're going to reprimand you. And I think that makes no sense. So I think it's got to be clear, not fuzzy. If we go down that route, I think it's much clearer just to say, refrain from divulging to anyone any details discussed in executive session. That's a clear rule. If it's an executive session, yes, you maintain confidentiality. Otherwise, you are going down a road with no definition, and I think that's wrong. And I don't think you can cure it by saying when appropriate.
All right, let's go to the next one and we'll come back to that.
I think we ought to have us conduct ourselves in a fair and impartial manner during all commission meetings. Conduct themselves in a fair and impartial manner, period, but in our whole life, I think that's imposing a burden that we shouldn't bear. It's enough that we are conducting ourselves in a fair and impartial manner in the meetings.
I struck that phrase too. The exact same phrase Joe struck. During all commission meetings, I mean, yeah, but we're going to conduct ourselves in a fair and impartial manner when we're walking the streets. I mean, I know that that's what I would be doing.
It's your code of conduct as a commissioner, not, which involves interaction with the public, and you should be fair and impartial with the public.
I'm sorry, Joe.
So if these are the codes, if this is a code of conduct as a police commissioner, I'm in the role of commissioner outside of public meetings, when I'm talking to the public, for example, and I should be fair and impartial when speaking to the public as a commissioner. It doesn't, none of these reflect every moment of your life. It's as a commissioner, that's the code of conduct as a commissioner. So when you're as a commissioner, you should be fair and impartial, whether you're in a meeting or not.
Okay, so if I'm campaigning, I have to conduct myself in what you might think is a fair and impartial manner.
Yeah, it's not fair to go and trash an opponent, right? That's not appropriate as a commissioner. Maybe that's not a good example.
I think, yeah, I think you're really stretching it with the campaigning piece. That's a whole different animal.
Okay, how about if I'm talking with a citizen and the citizen records me? And somebody then says, well, you were being critical of something and that's not fair and impartial. The only reason I raise that example is that I have been told that some people have recorded me without my knowledge. And that they have shared that information with others. And I just don't see why we need to say more than that we're being fair and impartial during all commission meetings. I think it's putting constraints that are not appropriate. If we are not conducting ourselves in a fair and impartial manner, we can be ousted at the next election. To me, that's the remedy for,
Yeah, but that's not, because that's 3.5 years down the road, potentially. It's talking about code of conduct while you're a commissioner. And if you get stopped on the street and get engaged in a conversation with a constituent, that you should behave in a fair and impartial manner. Period.
if we get stopped on the street and we get engaged by a constituent, we are individual commissioners. We are not speaking for the commission. We are not speaking for the department. We are only authorized to speak for ourselves. And I think we each have to be the judge of how we want ourselves to reflect.
So you believe that you should, in the public, be unfair and partial when you're talking to people? I mean, I don't know why you were objecting to appropriate behavior. I don't get it.
Because it's like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Joe. And what seems reasonable to me might seem impartial to you. And I don't want a member of a minority to be at peril of a majority.
We're writing these so we have a universal understanding. And again, future, none of us are here, right? None of us run again in 5 years. What are the kinds of things that a new commissioner should be aware of when they're conducting themselves? You should be fair and impartial when you're a commissioner. In a meeting, out of meeting. That's how I look at it. You're talking about gotchas and secret recordings and all this other stuff. You got to think more broadly about the future, not about what experiences you may or may not have had.
Okay.
That's why you write this. You don't write this for a specific person, for a specific term. You think more globally.
And I think fair and impartial manner during all commission meetings says enough.
Well, I would have to say, I don't agree. I think that language during all commission meetings needs to come out. So, and I walked in here having struck it. So I'm feeling, when I read it a couple of days ago and when I'm reading it now, it strikes me the same way. It should be a code of conduct that we abide by. Whenever we're in a meeting or out of a meeting. I just think that it is, I think he's right when he says this is for everyone else down the road for the future. These are guidelines. And I think that we're not going to try and correct all wrongs that have been done to us by rewriting these things in such a way that it works.
I'm not trying to correct all wrongs,
But that is
but I am trying to give an example.
what is coming across.
But what I'm saying is I am giving an example. Having been in the minority, and I want to protect the minority. We are right now in a majority, and I'm trying to be very careful not to abuse that position. But to say that police commissioners will, in all their endeavors, conduct themselves in a fair and impartial manner. Are you talking about when acting on behalf of the commission, when communicating on behalf of the commission, when addressing the public with respect to some subject relating to the commission? What? To me, it's just so overbroad as to be meaningless. And I think if we're adopting bylaws for code of conduct of commissioners acting as commissioners, when do they do that? They do that in meetings, in commission meetings. And if we can demand better civility, which is really what this is about, and respect of each other in our meetings, I think that is something the public has a right to expect. I don't think we need to create further hobble ourselves in our expression in other contexts than in commission meetings.
Okay, we'll skip this one too. The next one.
I said fulfill mission, but I'm not married to that. I don't know, perform safely and effectively, fulfill mission. I thought fulfill mission was a little broader and would encompass more.
Which one are you looking at?
The next one, number 5.
Number 5 is strive to ensure the Department of Police Services.
I think there is
Personnel training equipment, and then perform safely and effectively. I just broadened that to say to fulfill their mission. That was, so it's more than just safely and effectively. Right? But I'm not passionate about that.
Am I looking at the wrong thing?
No, it's number 5 here.
Yeah.
The last couple of
Yeah,
words,
You changed the last word.
because it's more than safe and effective.
To
That's all.
fulfill their mission.
Yeah, it's like everything they do. So that's
Okay,
okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
About performing effective, safely and effectively was their mission.
Well, but I think it's more than that. Yeah, but okay.
Number 6.
I think it's the same.
Okay, I think the shorter version there is better. That's Joe's.
Okay. Number 7, abide by decisions reached by the commission as a collaborative body.
I think a collective body is the better word.
Yeah, I think
For that.
That's fine.
correct.
So that's sweet.
I like the word abide.
Yeah.
Okay, number 8, disclose in advance any possible conflicts of interest to the commission chair.
Yeah, I think it's gotta be conflicts
On the agenda,
on something that's on the agenda.
Fine.
I strongly object to your version of 9, Joe. The limitations of participation or bias or prejudice, as I understand the law, relate solely to when we act in a quasi-judicial capacity. If someone has demonstrated bias, and let's be specific, if someone has demonstrated a bias against the chief and they get elected, are they now precluded from participating as a commissioner? Because
Yeah, no, I hear you. There maybe needs to be more, but I found the quasi judicial a little restrictive too.
but that's the law, and this is just reflecting the law. You're not disqualified from voting as a commissioner on some proposal that is not a.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. I'm all right with it.
so we'll
We'll go
use
with that one,
Chuck's.
yeah.
I think 10 is necessary.
Well, it is now. It is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you deleted my 11, which I am trying to keep because that was specifically blessed by our council.
Well, just because the council said it was okay, doesn't mean it's a good idea.
But I think it is a good idea, which is why
Well,
I asked our council.
so I-
to bless it.
But I think I strongly disagree on where I was last time we met, right? Because the tone of that, the choice of words, is a little, as I started to say a little earlier, is a little bit vague, and it also kind of smacks of go do your own thing. So that's why instead of conduct, I made it a role and I made it D. Because from our conversation last time, that is really what I took away from it. And the last part of it is in working with the commission, there's additional information, work with the commission to get the extra information, but do it with, as a group, as part of being an active member, not going off and doing something on your own.
And again, my concern is that freezes out the minority whenever the majority decides that they don't want a subject to be touched. And I don't think, as a public body, we should adopt that as our bylaw.
Well, it's got nothing to do with parties or politics.
No, it's got to do with a majority versus a minority.
No, I'm talking about individual commissioners being active, reading the stuff that you've got, speaking up, asking questions, and getting more information. I mean, if you want to keep going down the majority minority range, which I'm uncomfortable that you keep bringing that into this, because that's not where I'm coming from with this, then everybody's going to be frozen out no matter what, because then it just won't appear on the agenda, so it'll never happen. Because if the chairman of the majority doesn't want something on the agenda, it's not on the agenda. So you can play the freeze out game all day long. But no, the way 11 is written, it suggests people go out on their own and do their own thing, and they shouldn't be. D addresses that and sets the expectation of people. I mean, we missed this whole expectation of being active and participating and doing all those kinds of things. We never addressed that as a role. So D covers both of those things in my mind.
Okay. And when you say working with the commission to seek additional information, you mean working with the commission as a majority of the commission decides, right?
You're gonna need to say that again. I didn't follow that.
Well, when you say working with the commission as you use it is essentially the majority of the commission, right?
No, we're all together. And if we're talking about poodles and we're gonna have poodles on the next agenda, then maybe we make a subcommittee. Maybe we decide that Jill's gonna call a pet store, like whatever it might be. This has got nothing to do with majority and minority. It has to do with the things that we're talking about. And that me not going off on my own, making phone calls and doing those kinds of things.
Okay, who asks Jill to go off and talk to the pet store? Me? One other commissioner? Jill volunteers and says, I'm going to do it. If a majority of the commission says, no, we don't want Jill to do that, that means Jill can't do it, right? Under your version. Doesn't it mean that?
But why would she? If we all agree.
No, you said we all. We don't all agree.
Okay, I'm going in this with a collaborative attitude that we're working so hard at, and you're back to politics and majority minority. You turn this whole meeting into that, and it's very problematic. That's not the tone that we had last time. It wasn't the tone that we've had at our last several meetings, and that's where you're at right now. And it's all about the gotchas and your history and all that other kind of stuff. And that's, take this as the spirit of, by the way, this is a role. This isn't a code of conduct. This is an overarching, what do you do if you're on the commission? I've never been on the commission. What do? I represent, I understand, I get where the power comes from, and I'm actively engaged, and I do things as a group. And I don't go off on my own, which we've talked about.
Okay, let me put a real life example. Last night, during our commission meeting, we got a letter from a citizen saying, if you want more information about why this officer did what he did, here's a number to call. Right? You got that letter?
Yep.
Now, I haven't called. I don't think any other commissioner has called. If we go to our next meeting, or we have a special meeting, and I suggest that we call this person to find out what this person has to say. And a majority of the commissioners say, No, we should leave well enough alone, forget about that. This would suggest, your language would suggest to me that that commissioner should drop it, right?
right?
Okay,
Because it's something that's been discussed and voted upon, regardless of political party.
okay. And that was the point I was making. When you say, regardless of political party, you're assuming that minority, as I was using it, means political party.
And that is how you were using it, because you even stated, we have the majority. You stated that earlier. So that was what, I took it that way, because that's how you said it.
But any time you have a person who is on the short end of a vote, whether it's by party or by, bipartisan mixture, but especially if it's by party, I think the group in the minority should not be constrained. I just.
But then you're saying it doesn't, that you have authority to do things as an individual and you don't.
Wait a minute, I don't have authority to bind the commission. All I have authority to do as a citizen is to try my best to learn.
You're trying to find a way to act as an individual, not as the group. And regardless of how the vote comes out and political parties, if the group makes a decision on a direction that will take or something that will fund or whatever it might be, it's a group decision.
Right.
And everyone needs to, and it's in there, accept the group
Abide by
decision,
decisions
and it's
made
over.
by the-
So
I agree with abide by decisions. I agree with that.
then why would you go out and make a phone call?
Because the decisions that I was thinking you were referring to is not decisions as to what you learned, but decisions as to what our budget is, what we fund, who we hire, the decisions that the commission makes in order to serve its function.
Right, so we decide to
You're
not,
talking about a decision as to what a commissioner can do to pursue a concern or an interest that he wants or she wants to then bring to the commission for action.
so you bring it, we decide, or perhaps the chair decides it's on the agenda. It's on the agenda, it goes forward. If it's not on the agenda, it doesn't. It's that simple. But you don't go off and do something on your own. And number 11 suggests you go off and do something on your own.
Yes, it does.
And that's why it cannot be in this.
It says you can look into things on your own. Yes, I fully acknowledge that.
Which is not how a public commission works. You work as a group.
It's how
not as a
Congress
individual.
works, it's how the House of Representatives, the Senate. I'm sure our state legislature. I'm sure that our selectmen have pet interests and concerns that they pursue. I think it's the political process, frankly.
When I was reading this, I was looking at number 10 and number 11 almost side by side. So that when acting in the quasi judicial capacity, refrain from also acting in investigative capacity. And then following that, it says, except as otherwise provided herein, strive to keep themselves informed. That the combination of those two together for me made me feel a little bit better about number 11.
Yeah, I completely agree that when we are acting, or I would go even beyond that, as soon as we perceive that something might require us to act, then we abandon any individual investigation because we don't want to taint ourselves. But if we're just in the initial stages of seeing what the other departments do about this issue or that issue, what do citizens think about this issue or that issue, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's our responsibility, I would think.
Only to do it as a group or with the approval of the group, especially if you're making phone calls to other departments or other commissions.
All right, so we've gone through all of these at this point. Shall we double back to the others? Figuring out how we can work through some kind of this.
Sure.
I don't mind D in role of commission members, so long as it's not to the exclusion of my 11.
Do you understand how somebody, new commissioner, looks at that and says, I go off and I do my own thing? That's what that smells like. It really does.
Well, yes, it does. And I think commissioners should be able to go off and elicit information on their own. And then if they decide that it's important to bring to the commission, bring it to the commission. What they can't do is misrepresent themselves that they are acting on behalf of the commission.
But
I agree with that.
But as soon as you call another police entity, commission, sheriff's department, police owners, and say, I am on the Old Saybrook Police Commission.
And I am interested in this subject. Do you have the ability, can you talk with me for a little bit?
You are representing yourself as the commission. That's how it's being interpreted on the other end of the phone.
I agree with you. I'm representing myself as a commissioner, but I'm not representing myself.
But it's not going to work, but that's not reality. That's not reality. And we've already seen this happen. So we know that that's not true.
Well, you say we've already seen this happen, but I've had conversations with chiefs in other departments, and I have been very clear that I am not acting on behalf of the commission. I'm acting on behalf of myself as a member of the commission, trying to get information.
Only an experienced member of a public commission understands that fine line. So it's problematic because this is, again, 50,000-foot view for the inexperienced. That's how this has to be written. You can't take all of your wealth of knowledge and experience and assume any of that with this.
Neither can I take all of my wealth of knowledge and experience and say, I'm not able to bring it to bear to my job.
No, but here's the difference. And this was, you were especially passionate about this last time we met, where you said, you have to bring it. You're expected to, when you're not. There's a difference between human nature and having some and the expectation or the role being that.
Well,
which is why actively engaged is better than strive to get informed.
say that again.
That's why,
Actively engaged.
right. Be part of the process, do the work, work hard. But strive to keep yourself, really talks about doing your own thing.
A, I disagree with you, and B, our lawyer disagrees with you.
Again, enough of the lawyer. He said it was legal. I don't care if it's legal. I care what's appropriate for the future of the commission. That's what's important.
When we campaign, we project to the voters a conception of how we see our role as commissioners. And if you choose to project yourself as someone who wants to be a more active gatherer of information and an independent analyst of that information, and you get elected, I think you owe it to the town to act on that.
I think if you're elected to a public board or commission, you act as a member of that and not as an independent person.
Of course you do.
But that's not what 11 implies at all. Again, especially to the uninitiated, right? For the newbie.
See, I was okay with 11, as I said, as long as number 10 was there. Because if we're acting in a quasi judicial capacity, we're refraining from an investigative, we're also refraining from also acting in an investigative capacity. To me, that was a guardrail that kind of set it up for number 11.
And that's what it was intended as.
But what about me picking up the phone and calling another agency and saying, I'm a commissioner in Saybrook, I have a question.
See, I don't much have a problem with calling another agency. In fact, I have done not that here, but elsewhere. And the upshot generally is that it backfires anyway on that commissioner, because the person on the other end in authority typically picks up the phone.
Well, sure, we all know how the world works, right?
Yes.
But we also want to set ourselves up for success. So why would you ever pick up the phone and call another agency without it being part of a conversation like, hey, for next month, let's have people do this? Why would you go out on your own and do that? That's where I have a problem.
I think that I know 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, my brain is still working, and I think next day I'm going to find out about this. So I pick up the phone and decide to make some inquiries. I don't mind that action. What bothers me is when it's taken to a different place. And honestly, the number 10 cures that for me, because you can't, if you're going to be expected to be that jury, you have to be careful that you're not investigating. And that is the distinction that we had, that we eventually talked about when Larry raised it last time. And it seems to work for me that number 10 in conjunction with 11 work. I also like your D. I think that is a good place to land in the roles of commission members as well. So, I mean, it adds value.
Yeah, I have no objection to D. I just don't want it to eliminate.
But 11 says to a new commissioner, you need to go out and do your own thing. That's what it reads. And just because it comes after 10 doesn't mean that that's going to prevent that. I'm trying to future-proof the behavior of future commissioners. And the way 11 is right now, it causes that problem.
Okay, I think we're gonna go round and around about this, and not solve that piece. I'd like to try and work on 3 and 4 again, and then we'll talk about 10 and 11 again. So the maintain confidentiality piece.
Yeah, I wish I could think of an adjective, but I can't. To find the middle ground on that.
Yeah.
Well, how about maintain confidentiality of matters discussed in confidence, including refraining from divulging to anyone any details discussed in executive session. You can't have a presumption that everything you ever discussed is incompetence.
No, but, and again, thinking of the unseasoned, how would they, yeah,
I think that's.
that's
a
better,
good
that's better,
compromise,
yeah. Okay,
That's okay. Doesn't.
No, it's all right.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last name.
He said it's somewhat repetitive,
But
yeah,
Yeah.
confidential, confidential.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
That's all right.
That's-
It works for me.
Before, instead of meetings, could we say something about Far Manor and all matters related to the police commission? So it's not just a meeting, but it's,
how about when representing the police commission? The problem with that is that when we're out there in the public, we're not representing the police commission.
depending how you start your sentence, yeah, you are or you're not, right? It's not clean, right? So that's why I said business, not as commissioner.
What was
Regarding,
your suggestion?
Parks and Rec, and all matters,
In all matters.
and all matters related to police commission.
I'm word searching here, just give me a second.
These changes on.
I did not bring my computer, but I certainly can, and then send it off, yeah, that would be fine. So just,
Maintain confidentiality in matters discussed in confidence. Number 7, elected body.
right, yep, 7, I got to cross that one off, and I said go with this one.
How about
Okay,
this, Joe? Something like this. Conduct themselves in a fair and impartial manner during all commission meetings or when discussing commission proceedings.
Not business proceedings, not business.
say that again, during all commission meetings.
Yeah, it's my 4, and then add after that, or when discussing commission proceedings. That's, that's saying we're not going to mischaracterize what happened in a commission proceeding.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, I'm so up to speed here.
Are you? Okay, all
I'm good. I got it all.
right, and it was Tubbs number 9 also?
Yes, I crossed off there and I checked there. And 10,
And 10.
yep,
So 11 remains our bugaboo.
Yeah, sticking point. I mean, I can suggest that we move this forward to the full commission and have them work through the rest of it, since the 3 of us appear to be stuck
We're
on it.
pretty good. Yeah, loggerheads here. Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, I'd rather go with finished product, but that may still be
It would
the
be,
best.
Well, going with the finished product would be ideal. I'm not so sure they're gonna get there.
Is there an additional item in my string of things in D that we can include that is less indicative of going off on your own, because that's my big concern, that as part of doing all these, it just comes out a little differently. I don't know. I'm processing out loud around there. I mean, raising concerns. Because Mr. Wilcox, you said a couple times about if I have an idea of something I want to. So is it raising concerns, suggesting agenda items? Is it?
Are you working on 4? Or are you working on 11?
I'm working on adding something to D to eliminate 11. Because the other piece of it is if it's a role versus an expectation of conduct. Right, so if you put it under 11, it's a code of conduct, which means you will do this. As opposed to a role. The role is more general. So if you're reading your materials, you're asking questions, you're participating in discussions, and you are blank.
Keeping themselves informed? Or is that still too broad for you?
Or informing themselves as to all matters within their purview.
That's better. Again, I'm just future proofing and thinking about. Because there it also means.
We've got C, which says where the power is derived from, general statutes.
Yep.
That's state law.
Yep, that's there.
That's already in C. So if we have D, actively engage in the work of the commission, this includes reading distributed materials, asking questions, participating in discussions, and work and informing themselves as to all matters within their purview.
Read that last part again. Participating in discussions.
And informing themselves as to all matters within their purview. We've already said in C what that purview is. Well, we don't even have to say all matters. Informing themselves as to matters within their purview.
How about keeping informed regarding matters? Just the change of the verb changes the tone and sounds less like going out on your own. So participating in discussions and keeping informed regarding matters within their purview. I think the combination of changing the verbiage and putting it as a role addresses my concerns.
Well, if we understand that keeping includes becoming.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course. I mean, I think it's implied in there. So we would be dropping the last part of that.
Yes,
Working with the commission.
right, because then
which
it
is
becomes,
fine,
it just
because-
becomes it.
Yeah. because, you know, it says actively engage in the work of the commission, so it kind of is.
So D would read, actively engaged in the work of the commission. This includes reading distributed materials, asking questions, participating in discussions, and keeping informed as to all matters within their purview. Or we could even strike all. And keeping informed as to.
I have keeping informed regarding matters within their purview.
Yes, okay.
That's what you had said before. I think that's just a little cleaner. Mrs. Devon, I'm going to try to send you the draft that has most of this language, and then I can sit with you right now and we can do it all.
I am good with that language.
Okay.
So 11 comes out and 10 is the last one.
Okay. So let's go from the top. And I've got the two documents side by side. So A from the document I distributed tonight. B from the document I distributed tonight. C from the document we got last night.
Okay.
D, we just twiddled, right? 1 and 2 from the document I brought today. 3, after confidentiality, I'm adding in matters discussed in confidence.
Right.
4, I'm using the language from the document from last night and adding or when discussing commission proceedings.
In all matters, right? Oh. What did you say it was?
I added or when discussing commission proceedings. And then 5 from today's document, 6 from today's document, 7, 8, 9, and 10 from last night's document. That's my reflective listening attempt.
Pretty good.
Okay.
Very good.
I think we're agreed.
Okay.
Okay, so are we going to then bring this bylaw concerning responsibilities of commissioners to the police commission for consideration? We would need a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. Do we have anything?
Anyone on?
We did.
No, you're first.
Thank you for your work and your hard work. As I said last night, my understanding was that council had approved of some text of these bylaws prior, so I'm puzzled as to why you're going through all this time to change it again. Because my understanding from last summer was that there were all sorts of objections because there were lawyers' objections. So then you came to consensus among lawyers that were chosen or agreed to by both major parties, Democrats and Republicans, including the first selectman, I'm assuming, because he hasn't written a letter. And now you're superseding those council opinions. I absolutely don't understand why, and I don't understand how you can justify the waste in your own time and in everyone's resources. That's number one. Number two, there seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding as to the fact that you all represent the people. They vote you into power and they vote you out of power. And therefore they have a right to speak to you. If I feel most comfortable with Mr. Maselli, and I have a personal matter that relates to some interaction I had with a member of the department that troubled me. but I wasn't sure whether, maybe I'm overreacting. And the only person on the commission I trust to talk about with it is Mr. Maselli. For some reason, I like the way he talks in meetings, or I know him from somewhere else, or someone recommended him to me, a mutual friend. What you were talking about tonight, you were saying that I cannot contact Mr. Maselli with my personal issue unless he's got to say no to my phone call. He's going to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You voted for me. You're my constituent. I sit on this commission to serve you, but I can't help you. Wait a month, and I'll bring this up in a public meeting with the 7 other commissioners, whoever else is here, the entire public, the chief of police, whatever police officers may be here, which may be one, maybe I had a problem with the dispatcher, maybe I had a problem with some new recruit. And then after we discussed it, if there's a vote of the majority, I'll get back to you. That is frankly absurd. That is a violation of your oath. Now, I don't know where this is coming from, what you're afraid of, but I'm a person talking to you as my representatives. That is a sacred trust. And for you to muzzle yourselves and to muzzle me from talking to you, it's outrageous.
May I speak with you later?
Nobody online that have hands up.
Thank you.
No, there is.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, there
Yes.
is.
System's going slow.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Mark Hand, president of Old Saybrook. I just wanted to agree with what Linda Mahal just said, and also thank Chubb for continuing to stand firm for the principles of liberty and democracy and access to our public officials. I think this commission seems to be going down the road of less access, not more darkness, less sunshine. But we need the sun to shine on everything you do to keep you accountable. Thank you all for your service, and thanks for listening.
No others.
Nothing. Thank you, Larry.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.